My goal today is to create a scorecard in QuickScore. I've already logged in and have landed at my home page. Before I build the scorecard, I'll take a look at a pre-developed scorecard for Mobile World. On the primary navigation pane on the left, I'll select Scorecards. Using the drop-down arrow at the top, I can review a pre-built organizational structure which contains the company level and a number of departments beneath it. A key thing to note is that QuickScore only allows one item at the root level, in this case my organization, but allows for an extensive structure beneath that. For example, if I expand sales, I see a tree structure that goes down 5 levels deep for the US. If I want to select a particular level beneath Mobile World like financial, I could click on it and then choose select. However, I'm going to work with the company level by clicking back on it and then choosing select. I now see the Mobile World Balanced Scorecard, which has already been developed using the classic Balanced Scorecard design, containing the financial, customer, internal processes, and organizational capacity perspectives. Each of those perspectives are fed scores from underlying objectives, which are fed scores from underlying measures, My goal now is to illustrate the development of a new scorecard and organizational hierarchy from scratch. To do so, I'll click the drop-down arrow at the top, ensure Mobile World is selected, and then select Edit. My next step is to select New Organization. Type in the desired name. In this case, I'll just call this Training, and then select Add Organization. Once I do that, the new item will exist at the bottom of the listing of organizations. Note that the new organization looks different than the organizations above it. It contains an empty circle versus a filled-in circle because there are no scorecards yet tied to it. I'll click Done to remove myself from edit mode, and then click Select to the right of the training organization. The first thing that gets presented to me is the opportunity to create scorecard. I'll select that button and provide a name of training. I could provide a description and a tag, but I'll leave those blank and select Create. Now that a scorecard exists, it will now assume that I will build up the scorecard in the traditional way of first defining perspectives. I will do just that by typing a name of financial. On the right, I could change the type to something like an objective or a measure, but in this case I'm perfectly happy with leaving that as a perspective, so I'll click away and just choose Create. When I choose Create, QuickScore assumes I'll be adding another perspective. In this case I will. So I'll type Customer and then select Create. Once I'm done creating perspectives, I can click on one of the perspectives already created. I'll select Customer, and the auto-generated item will automatically disappear. Once I'm ready to create objectives, I'll select the appropriate perspective that is tied to them, in this case financial, and then I'll select New Scorecard Item at the top. Notice that instead of building items at the same level, like with the perspectives previously, I now have a tiered structure going with the objective residing beneath the perspective. With that looking correct, I'll type the name of Increase Revenue, and then I'll select Create. I could load additional financial objectives, but for the sake of time, I'll make that my last one, and I'll move on to the creation of measures. I'll click on the new objective, Increase Revenue, and once again select New Scorecard Item. The hierarchy once again looks correct, cascading from perspective to objective to measure. So I'll type Product Revenue as the name. I'll also confirm that the type on the right is set to measure. Moving down to the Measure Details section, for scoring type, QuickScore provides a number of different options. Unscored, yes, no, and so on. The most commonly deployed option is the default option of goal and red flag, which provides 3 colors, red, yellow, green, and a 0 to 10 normalized scoring range. In this case, I'm happy with the default of goal and red flag, so I'll just click away from scoring type. Moving to the right, I can change the frequency of which any measure is updated to monthly, quarterly, or yearly, for example. Once again, I'm happy with the default of monthly, so I'll just click away from calendar. To the right of that is data type with options of number, percentage, and currency. Given that this is a revenue metric, I'll select currency. Moving down, the aggregation type allows me to set how the data should be aggregated if I move to a different periodicity, like quarterly or yearly. Since these are revenue numbers, I just want them to be summed up. So I'll leave the default of sum and move away from aggregation type. To the right of that is the decimal precision, which can contain a display of 0 to 4 decimal places. I'm happy with the default, so once again I'll click away from decimal precision. Next to that is the currency symbol, and since our company is based in the United States, I'll switch to dollar. Moving down to the series section, the series is going to reflect the scoring type defined earlier, in which I accepted the default of goal and red flag. If I go back to scoring type and switch it to 3 color, for example, I'll notice that the series section automatically changes to include entries for best and worst. I'll go ahead and set that back to goal and red flag, move back to the series section, and set the threshold values for just the ones I want, which is red flag and goal. The red flag value for our product revenue is going to be $440,000. Meaning if I dip below that value, I'll get a normalized score between 0 and 3.33 and be in the red. The goal will be $470,000, meaning that if I go above that value, I'll get a normalized score between 6.67 and 10 and be in the green. Anything between $440,000 and $470,000 will be between 3.34 and 6.66 and be in the yellow. Moving further down, I had the opportunity to set the measure owner and updater, and I'll choose myself for both of those options. After setting all the properties for product revenue, I'll give things a quick review and then select Create in the bottom right. Once again, QuickScore assumes I want to create another item, and in fact I do, as I want to create training revenue. I'll type that in. And an important note this time around is that the product defaults to all the settings that I just used for product revenue. For example, I had switched the data type to currency and the currency value to a $sign. And those settings have now come through as the new default. The only thing I need to do for this particular measure is set the red flag. For this one, I'll set it to 200,000. And the goal I'll set to 220. I'll then scroll down and once again assign myself as the measure owner and the measure updater. Once I'm done with that, once again I'll select Create. I'm going to quickly create one more measure named Book Revenue. I'm happy with all the defaults towards the top. I'm just going to set the red flag to 50,000 this time and the goal to 70,000. Once again, I'll assign myself as the owner and updater and select Create. At this point, we have defined 3 measures under the increased revenue objective. One item I do want to point out is the concept of weighting. After a measure has been defined, if I click on it, let's say product revenue, I'll see that a weight of 33.33% has been automatically applied to it. What QuickScore will do is evenly divide the number of measures when assigning the weight. In this case, 100 divided by the 3 measures is equal to 33.33. I do have the ability to override that by clicking on weight and perhaps assigning product revenue double the importance of the other 2 measures by switching the value to 2 and then selecting Save. But in this case, I'm actually happy with the default of 1 apiece, so I'll just select Cancel to undo that. This weighting will impact the normalized scoring in the roll-up up to the next level. So if product revenue was red, and I made it 4 times more important than the other 2 measures, odds are the increased revenue objective will also be in red, even if the other 2 are green. Another item I'd like to discuss is the concept of calculated measures. To do so, I'll create one more measure beneath increased revenue. I'll select it and then select New Scorecard Item. And I'll introduce the 4th measure called Total Revenue. Unlike the others, this measure will not impact the performance score of the increased revenue objective. I'm adding it solely for tracking purposes. Under scoring type, for the first time, I'll deviate from the default of goal and red flag and change it to unscored. Everything else under the measure details section will be left exactly the same as the other measures. Under the series section, I'll change it from actual value of manual to calculated. When I do that, a new option appears where I can select Set Equation and proceed to define a calculation that sums up the other 3 measures. Now, if I was an absolute genius, I could directly type the equation in the actual value box with the correct IDs for each measure. But since I'm not, I'll click on Select a Measure and navigate to the increased revenue objective, which is all part of the training organization. On the right, I'll select Product Revenue and then select Done. Next step is I'll select Add, and we'll see that measure ID come across in the actual value section. I'll then work my way up there and put a plus sign. I'll then proceed to introduce the other 2 measures. I'll again click on Select a Measure. This time click on Training Revenue, click Done, and click Add. One more time I'll add in a plus symbol, going back to selecting a measure, I'll click Book Revenue and click Done. One more time, I'll click Add, and I'll click Done to leave the Set Equation window. At this point, I'll now select Create. If I click on Total Revenue on the left-hand side, since it's an unscored measure, I'll see the weight has been correctly applied as 0. If I click on the 0, I'll see the original 3 measures carry their original weights of 33.3. They will be the only measures that impact the score of the increased revenue objective. Having no changes to make, I'll select Cancel to close the window. At this point, I could add all of my measures and objectives across all of my perspectives, but for the sake of time, I'll assume I have built up a complete structure and select Done in the bottom left. The last thing that I'd like to do is load a few actual values for my measures so I can see some colorized scoring. If I click on Product Revenue, I'll see the red and gold values defined when I added the measure, 440,000 and 470,000. However, I have no actual values loaded as yet, and hence have no normalized score. By default, I'll be looking at the prior month, which in this case is May of 2019. To enter values for May, I'll click on the Update button in the middle, and then enter an actual value. In this case, I'll make it 480,000. And then I'll click Save. When I do that, I'll notice a change in the performance section in the top left. My alert is now populated with an actual value. A normalized score of 7.78 was generated, and the green section has been filled in. Since I entered an actual value that is above my goal, I instinctively know that I'll be in the green, and my normalized score will be something between 6.67 and 10. Now, if I toggle to any other month but May, I'll see just the threshold values with no score, since no other actual values have been loaded yet. And so I'll go back to May. Now, if I have a lot of values to update, there is an easier method to load them on the home page. So I'll go ahead and select Home. Under your responsibilities, I'll select Measure Updates. The default is to show all measures for all of my organizations. If I'm overwhelmed by that list and want to narrow that down to just the financial measures I just defined, I'll select the drop-down arrow and choose the training organization. I see that of the 3 measures, I've only updated product revenue for May of 2019. If I wanted to open this up to more time periods in the top right, I could click on the drop-down arrow, change that to quarterly, and then click Show Results. This would now allow me to enter data for April, May, and potentially June. However, to save myself some time and effort, I'm going to switch that back to monthly. And select May of 2019, select Show Results. And now for training revenue, I'll enter 210,000. And book revenue, I'll enter 50,000. And then I'll select Update Measures in the bottom right. QuickScore will then save the values for anything that had not been entered previously and briefly display a message accordingly. If I'm done entering values, I can go back to scorecards. If I expand the financial perspective and the increase revenue objective, I'll see that for May, my product revenue is in the green, training revenue is in the yellow, and my book revenue is in the red. If I click on the total revenue measure, I'll see it looks completely different. There's no colored score, only a total revenue value of $740,000, which is the correct sum of the three measures, which is $480,000 plus $210 plus $50. If I click on increase revenue, I'll see a normalized score of 5.37, which is the normalized score of each of the weighted measures below it, divided by 3. If I work my way up to the financial perspective, I'll see the same normalized score of 5.37, since there is just that one objective that feeds it. And lastly, if I click on the training scorecard, once again, I'll see the same normalized score of 5.37, since I have not yet loaded any values for the customer perspective.